Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. And happy April Fool's Day? I mean, this episode's not coming out on April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day already happened to you if you're listening to this. So I hope you made it. I don't like April Fool's Day. I'm Illeagle 86, Nerdbomber Techtic. Do you guys like April Fool's Day? What's your stance on April Fool's Day?
I guess it depends, because if it's just like people doing like shitty one-liner jokes and then you go, April Fool's, it's just kind of annoying. But from what we've seen in like the gaming community, there were like some actual fun ones where they actually gave like players content and like fun like promotional things that actually made it quite an enjoyable of a day.
Nerdbomber, I want your opinion first, but then I'm going to tell you everyone why that's not enjoyable.
So I'm like on the fence. I don't really care one way or another about it. Like Techtic said, there's some like brands who do stuff and I find that funny. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting his name. Who is the guy who plays Drax?
Dave Bautista?
Yes, Dave Bautista posted like his Netflix sponsored stand-up show coming out where he's just like very unfunny. And like that was kind of funny. But I also don't enjoy getting fooled and pranked all day. So for example, my mom texted me first thing in the morning on April Fool's Day. And like I was still kind of half asleep and she's like, oh, I got your dad to sign up for FanDuel and we won $500 last night. I'm really excited. And I was like, oh,
that's
wow.
Just mean. That's so
And then
mean.
she was like, April Fool's. And I was just like, what? I'm still asleep.
Why? She woke up and chose violence.
This is the first time hearing of this story, and amazing.
That's crazy. that is so. Mrs. Nerdbomber went hard. I mean, morning prank. Like, my problem with April Fools, if you can't already tell, if you haven't already guessed this about me, is that I'm a very gullible person. Okay, I want to believe people. I want to believe in people, and I want to believe people. So for me, the payoff of any April Fool's joke is so minimized because at first I believe it and I'm like, why are you doing this thing that's counter to everything that society expects of you and also what you expect of yourself? And then when you find out finally that it's April Fool's, you're like, oh, okay. So it's like, it's not even, there's no point at which it's funny to me. Even after I realize it's a joke, I'm like, what a waste of my time. Is that like, I don't know. I don't want to be a curmudgeon like 2 minutes into the episode, but I think April Fool's, man, it's stopped being funny for me in like high school.
Oh, I woke up and literally told her, interestingly enough, I told Nerdbomber to text her mother some April Fool's joke, and she was like, no, that's dumb. So you should have did it.
Well, it was also a really dumb April Fool's joke, and I don't want to get into it, but it was just a really dumb April Fool's joke, so.
It was so good.
I think the funnier thing is like, I don't know if you've heard this. I don't think it's an urban legend. I think it's like a confirmed fact that at one point, some April Fool's Day, like 20 years ago or something, Google emailed all the employees and was like, a python is loose in our headquarters. And everyone was like, sick April Fool's joke, Google. And then it actually turned out that it was true and there was actually a python loose in their headquarters. That's funny. The double reverse, that's a good April Fool's joke. That's not a joke. It's just
Did you know that April Fool's actually originated in Saturday morning cartoons on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? It started as a joke that April, the female protagonist, was playing on the Turtles, and it just kind of manifested itself into its own holiday.
I feel like that's not true, but okay.
I think he's doing an April Fool's joke right now.
I'm doing a thing, guys.
But it's not April Fool's anymore. You can't do a posthumous April Fool's joke.
He's one of those, the whole month is April Fool's.
Every day is April Fool's when you're working with fools in April.
But
yeah, okay, that was pretty good. We're not talking about April Fool's today. Well, we just did, but we're going to talk about other stuff too. We're going to be talking about E3, the big news that came down about E3 in the past week. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite movies of, I think it was the 2010s. It might have been the late 2000s. It's getting not a reboot, but a different kind of treatment on Netflix. And then we're also going to be talking about a superhero that I know nothing about. Maybe that's not much of a teaser, but as you may guess or expect, I think Techtic knows something, so he's going to tell us about it. So we're going to get to all three of those things, but it's that time, again, where I give you advice. And again, haven't heard anything negative yet about this, so I'm just going to keep doing it. And
Have you heard anything positive?
Haven't heard anything positive, but thank you for asking, by the way. But I'm gonna say no news is good news here, and I'm gonna stay away from sweat. Whenever I go on my Twitter now, I just see a lot of sweat jokes. A lot of people are talking about how I sweat. So maybe that's a negative aspect of me starting this segment. But as long as I don't talk about sweat and any of the future advice, I think I'll be okay. And I want to note before I give my advice this week that I now have a note like a note on my phone, and the title of it is just advice, and I'm just stacking things up in it. Like I'm realizing that I've wanted to be giving advice in this sort of context for years, and I've just never had the courage.
Bonus secret segment idea. We have you drink a shot of hot sauce, and it's just illegal sweats.
Yeah, and then like at the end I apply antiperspirant, so it's fine. Actually, I guess at the beginning I would, and then we see how well it works. That is a good idea. Put that in our good ideas folder. But put this in your good ideas folder for this week, world. So this, as I think I mentioned last week, I'm not going to be on the episode next week. I'm going to be abroad, as I'm going to be traveling. I'm not going to be a lady. You know how, like it's in the 20s, they would call ladies broads? I'm not going to be a broad in that sense. I'm going to be traveling somewhere. My advice for this week is very simple, and it is to overpack. Overpack. Pack 2 bags. If you were going to pack 1 bag, consider packing 2. Especially if you're flying, you can pack like a carry-on, a personal. It is value added.
What I want to hear is
it's absolutely value added.
Hey, overpack with these essential items, i.e., Q-tips. Q-tips are an underrated item that are never at hotels, and that you always find yourself needing one for a situation.
Whose advice is column is this? Is this mine or yours?
Wow.
No, it's actually really good advice. Now we're off track, but I don't remember the last time I used a Q-tip.
Do you just have dirty ears out here? What do you do?
They are naturally fine most of the time, and when they're not,
are you sure?
I have other means.
Are you sure they are?
Yeah. I'm not a cute. Look,
next time I see you in person, I'm gonna inspect your ears. I'm gonna be like, "Do you have grody ears?"
We have the equipment.
You're gonna be turning me sideways and shaking me and seeing what falls out. No, I mean, I'm like in the shower. Things happen ear-wise for me.
Oh, he power.
Oh, you get water in your ear, bro.
Well, I don't like put it directly into the jets, but like I get it done. I'm not worried about the cleanliness of my ears.
Just over here
Q-tips,
power washing his brain.
Q-tips scare me. Okay.
Well, you don't put them in like some people do.
Well,
no, you do it around the rim. You do it around the rim. I know that sounds dirty. You clean around the rim.
Yeah, you don't just go plunging in. You gotta gently massage around circles, little small circle.
Whether you pack Q-tips or something else, I implore you to overpack. And also, and here's a new one people may not have heard. I'm already packed. My bags are actually sitting right next to me as I record this. I'm not leaving it for like 5 more days. Pack early, because it reduces the chance of you forgetting something.
Make a list.
Pack a week. Do laundry like a week before you're leaving, and if your laundry can sustain that sort of gap in time, pack as soon as you do your laundry, so that then you'll remember things throughout the week.
I think my favorite story is we were going to a wedding, and we drove down, and we had actually packed in advance. Like, we had packed in the beginning of the week, planned to leave on Friday. We get down there, and I am like trying to get dressed, and keep in mind, in a road trip, it was like cold, so I wasn't wearing everything that I needed to be wearing. I just kind of had a hoodie and sweatpants on. And we get there, and I'm just like, I do not have undergarments to go with this dress.
Which means she couldn't leave the house.
So I had to send Techtic out on a run to Target to pick me up a cheap replacement because I did not have it with me.
I learned a thing or two about how bra sizes work that day.
Shout out to Target, not a sponsor. Yeah, and like undergarments is the extreme case, I would say. But like, I don't know how many times I've gone on a trip, in spite of all the talk I've just had about like how I overpack and I pack early. I went on a trip last year where I forgot a comb, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it shaped the entire trip for me when I realized I had forgotten it.
See, at that point, like you gotta hope that there's a store nearby and you just pick one up.
But I was busy doing. I couldn't like go. It was a short trip, so I didn't have time to like go and get a comb.
You can't just run your fingers through your hair.
That's what I did, but it's not exactly I like my hair to be combed. I think this is a personal
perfectly
problem.
Coiffed.
Okay, between like you not watching like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a number of other things, you were a dork. You were a little dork as a kid. I'm convinced of it.
This is like current day that I'm a dork. This happened to me last year when I needed to have my hair combed.
I know.
But it was a deep-seated thing that, it started in childhood. So I'll take that shot. Overpack, pack early. Don't forget undergarments or combs or Q-tips if that's your prerogative. I don't know. I'm just not a Q-tip guy. Not a sponsor. Q-tip's definitely not a sponsor of the podcast. But yeah, it's not the sexiest advice this week. But again, there's more in the hopper that's coming up.
Also, clear clothing tape is another clutch item to pack in your thing for both men and women apparel.
What does that even mean?
It's
clothing tape?
Yeah, it'll like help fix your tie if it's like taking the wind too much, or like with like a bra and and like an overdressed thing, it'll make sure that they stay together and don't slide down.
Fashion tape.
Fashion tape. Yeah.
Everyone should have a
Okay.
little thing of fashion
Yeah.
tape.
You've lost me at clothing tape because I've heard it called fashion tape. I think what else have I heard it called? I've never heard it called clothing tape. That's what threw me. But yeah, just keeping stuff attached to other stuff that needs to be.
Well, I think the clutch thing that we started doing. So obviously, you know, my Target emergency undergarment, after that was washed, it has a permanent home now in our suitcase, as does a little container of fashion tape,
Right.
a little baggie
Yes.
of Q-tips, like all of the stuff that we typically take, we have now a spare. So things that are like very critical that we could forget are already in the suitcase, no matter when we go somewhere.
You guys are huge Q-tip people, huh?
I mean,
I'd say
even
we're average sized Q-tips.
in terms of even like makeup, sometimes you need Q-tips to help
That's
touch
fair.
stuff up. So
Well, yeah, maybe I'm, you know what? I'll commit to giving Q-tips a fair shake. Maybe I've been too unkind to Q-tips. Let me just say that. That'll be my homowork for the week. Is just use Q-tips
Yeah, try
and see what
tipping.
happens.
It's not bad.
I'm gonna try tipping. So I'll get back to the to the listeners on that. I'm sure they'll be waiting with bated breath. But in the meantime, let's talk about. I feel like the headliner announcement this week is that E3 was canceled. So there's a lot. There's not a lot to this other than that it was canceled. But it's worth noting that I don't believe there's been an E3 since 2020. Was 2020's canceled? Yeah, it was canceled in 2020.
was canceled.
Digital in 2021. E3 2022 was canceled. And now 2023 is canceled. And this seems to be...
This
is
is
it fair
the
to call
death
this
knell.
indefinite?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think we should try and autopsy this to whatever extent we can. E3, not that I don't think any of us ever had the fortune to go, but it was like, to me, it was the dream. Like, not being not just a gamer, but like someone who did this podcast and like was kind of in on that culture. It was such an exciting week. And it was and even watching it from afar, it was super exciting. So as a thing dying, like it's a huge loss, I think, for us and for any gamer, or, you know, I think it even goes beyond gaming. It's just a huge thing. So why couldn't it survive? I mean, I feel like the predominant theory has to be that companies like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony are now doing their own big showcases and they're not playing nicely. Is that a fair...
I feel like that's
assessment?
definitely it. And I think part of it was, you know, this new era ushered in by COVID of all virtual everything. For those handful of years, all of the major developers, whether it was the console bigwigs like your PlayStation and Microsoft, Nintendo's, or even your smaller studios like Ubisoft and EA, they all got used to, you know, having their own digital production that they just blasted out onto YouTube, and it got just as much attention. So paying to go to E3, paying to have a panel and a big production in person, and especially like think about Ubisoft and how they often had like big performers, and they're just a lot of setup, you know, they had orchestras and all that kind of jazz. They're going to save a lot of money doing it and continuing to do the digital option that they have been over the last few years. But I do think it's a big loss because this might be overstating it, but to me it felt kind of like video games Super Bowl in a way. It was that one major event that everybody who was even remotely invested in video games kind of looked forward to, because it was like the one singular, you know, week or weekend where you got all of the news all in one place, all of the big, you know, hype generators for the next year or two were introduced at this one event. And now it kind of feels like we lost that. Like, we'll still get the news, but like it's going to trickle out in weird ways, and I don't know if I like it.
I think Super Bowl is a very good comparison because what it felt like to me was a premier point of access, right? Like it was for me, even as invested as I was, or as I still am in video games as an industry, like you could be a fan of gaming and essentially put your ear to the ground for 1 week or weekend out of the year and have a very strong sense of what's going on, right? By Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony kind of splitting off into their own things. And by the way, like, didn't the State of Play, to use that as an example, wasn't that previously like part of E3? Wasn't that just like a day that they had that this is the State of Play day, or like
pretty
have it in
much,
the big
yeah.
conference hall H or
See,
whatever?
but I think that was the justification to break it apart. You had like 3 sprints and it all kind of like melded together and people didn't get their
which was good. I think that was good.
Right, but let me tell you something. One thing that I will say that I saw more of them kind of spreading apart is each of those individual showcases now had more time to designate to the indie developers. So now these smaller studios got more time in the limelight, which I think is a positive.
Okay, hear me out though. And again, it is good that indie developers are getting more of a spotlight, but how many of the Nintendo Directs did you watch? And a lot of them were games that you've already seen a ton of because they already came out. They're just new to the Switch. Like, I can't tell you how many trailers that I've seen now for like the same indie game spread out over 3 or 4 different publishers or like console directs. Like, I've seen, I can't pinpoint one specifically, but like I feel like I've seen the same game be presented at PlayStation State of Play and then at, you know, the Xbox. I can't remember what they call their presentation, and then like the Nintendo Direct. I feel like I've seen the same game pop up multiple times, and it's not really even like new footage or information. It's just like, oh hey, we're over here now. And that's not a bad thing in terms of getting indie developers exposure, but it did feel like you kind of distilled away from some of the filler content that I feel like we get now when we have like these hour-long directs, and some of it's just filler. With E3, you had to give it your best and your biggest punches.
I also think that it's worth noting that sites like IGN and GameSpot and like sites that cover games, like I think IGN in particular, they would cover E3 to the extent and with the idea of making the content more accessible to me by basically saying, oh, during this event they revealed this trailer for this, here it is, and now I'm having to sift through, you know, entire hour-long showcases from Nintendo, like you said, repeating a lot of content and putting filler in that I just don't know that I watched as much of that when I was, you know, had my ear to the ground during E3. And I feel like the most troubling aspect of this is that, and maybe I'm wrong about this, maybe this is just how I feel about it, but it feels like it's going to cause this diaspora of like people are going to pick one of Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft. A lot of people are just going to say, okay, I have a PS5. I'm not going to see what else is going on. I'm going to watch the State of Play once a year or however many times they do it a year. And that's going to be that.
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm not
obvious that it's intentional for the business, right? It ensures they've locked it down. Oh, yeah, I don't disagree, but I don't want to just poo-poo on it. I want to make sure that we take this from an angle of, hey, there's pros and cons to this.
I think from a developer standpoint and a publisher standpoint, sure, but from a consumer standpoint, I tend to agree with Illeagle here.
Think about it as a developer. You, especially as an indie developer, if you're working towards, if you're trying to shoot at one target, which is E3, you're going to put out your most polished thing. It's going to be console agnostic. You're just going to say, hey, this game's coming out on these consoles. Here's a trailer for it, and you're done.
Yeah,
you know?
But you're lucky if they even give you the time for it because it's during E3 and they're sharing floor space.
I don't know. You may be right. I would think it would be harder as a developer. Think about it. As a developer, then, if you want to put your best foot forward, you have to figure out first, you know, so let's say you're coming out with a game for all 3 consoles.
On all 3 ones, if you can.
Where do you put your showcase? It's probably like a very no. I don't think that's the right answer. And even if it is the right answer, there's still the important question of where do you put it first?
Whichever one's first.
I don't know. I think there's more to it than that. I think there's probably more thinking through that they have to do that they didn't have to do when they had something like E3, which is just gamers come together, unite.
See, even if they don't have a polished game by the time it's ready, there's a lot of clever things that these developers can do. How many trailers for games do we see where it just says, this is not gameplay footage, and then you're just taken away by some cinematic role? Or inversely, you do see gameplay footage and it says, this is not the final product, or this is played on a PC with super optimized settings. You always have that catch in the bottom of the screen so that they can just make sure that they do whatever they feel is going to sell the game the best.
I just think it's easier to do that in the context of E3 than in some other showcase. But you know, we can agree to disagree on this. I think it's probably great for these individual companies, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, because they get more control over their events and what their players are seeing. But I think it's an echo of everything else we're hearing about how this competition is becoming fiercer, it's becoming stiffer between these big 3. And I guess really between Sony and Microsoft. I think Nintendo's kind of just doing their own thing and they always have. But I think
the Sony and Microsoft battle has gotten super contentious over Call of Duty and that whole Activision acquisition now too.
And, you know, I know console exclusives have existed for forever now, but like it just feels like that's so much more of a bargaining chip now, and again, this feels like an echo of that. It feels like a disunification, if that's even a word, that I
And
don't
it is
care
crazy because like it felt like for a little bit, and maybe this was imaginary, but it felt like for a tiny bit of history from like, I don't know, maybe like 2015 to 2020, like when, Google was trying to get in the game and Amazon was trying to get in the game. It kind of felt like the big three were sort of unifying a little bit. And now it just feels like that fell apart.
We literally talked about, and I agree with you, this was not a fever dream at all. We literally talked about in the last year the coming together of these consoles with like cross-platform gaming and things like that. There was a topic relevant to this about them coming together and singing Kumbaya, and I think we're back to
definitely over. Yeah.
And like,
The knives
it's
are out.
crazy because like as a consumer now, I know obviously we're a little spoiled in that, especially I think because of our focus on gaming with the podcast and just like our hobbies in general. We are two dinkwad adults, dual income, no kids with a dog adults who work full time. And so we have our smattering of consoles where we have our toes in every ecosystem right now. So for us, console wars are not that big of a deal. But I think like if you even talked to me 5 years ago before I had a console from every company, the dissolution feeling of the console wars kind of going away and everybody holding hands was kind of a shining bright light, because one of the things I always remember growing up, like when I only had an Xbox 360, like I didn't play The Last of Us when it came out on the PS3 because I didn't have one. And that was just, it was kind of sad. And likewise, like if I had a PlayStation, I would have missed out on the first Mass Effect. So it's just like, I don't know.
And it's always gone
I
on.
understand that console. It
feels amplified now.
Sad.
Yeah, it feels amplified now. It's super sad, and this just feels like the latest brick in the wall. So pour one out for E3. It's worth noting that ESA, which I don't actually know what ESA stands for. I thought it was European Space Agency, but that's definitely not right. They said they will continue to work together on future E3 events. And I'm quoting, future E3 events. I don't buy that for a second. But even if, whatever future E3 events means, I'm sure it doesn't mean E3 the way that we know E3. So are you upset that E3 is going away? Are you choosing to see the greener side of the grass, as it seems like Techtic is on this? At OW86 is my Twitter handle. At OW Nerdbomber. At OW Techtic, our Nerdbomber and Techtic, of course. And our main show account is at Online Warriors 1. That's all on Twitter. Go check us out there. Have a conversation with us about the demise of E3. So we talked about death, at least in the figurative sense with E3. Let's talk about rebirth. Let's talk about the announcement of a Scott Pilgrim anime series on Netflix. First of all, have you guys ever seen Scott Pilgrim vs. the World? The 2010 movie. This is a movie that I absolutely love. Yeah, I believe it was one of Edgar Wright's first movies, or it's one of his most popular, I think.
Can I just say, when you initially said that you loved this movie, I was a little surprised. I would not have pegged you for a Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, I love Scott Pilgrim. I love, in particular, the sense of humor of the Scott Pilgrim movie. I've never read the graphic novels, so maybe I'm not a purist and I'm not worthy of discussing this topic, but love the movies, love Michael Cera and all the cast. And this anime series that was just announced, coming to Netflix, I think the most important thing about this and the most impressive thing about this is they have the whole cast back. I don't even know how they did this. Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Kieran Culkin, Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, Brie Larson, Allison Pill, Aubrey Plaza, Brandon Routh, Jason Schwartzman, I mean, many others. Literally, it seems like the entire cast from the movie, which I think is critically important, and it raises my interest level. And I mean, I would have been interested either way, but to me, like it
had to be, because that movie has such a following. Not even the comic, right? The movie has such an incredible following. I think it would have been just pooped on left and right had they not done this move.
I just think it raises my interest level so much because, and like, yeah, you're probably right about the dollar signs, but like the implication of them getting the entire cast back is that this must be good. Like they must have seen something, be it a script or whatever, to suggest, okay, they want to get on this train and stay on it for as long as possible. So I'm super excited. I don't even know how much, I don't know how much more I have to say about it, other than that I think it's going to be great. This is, for me, a very pivotal moment because I know you guys have watched a good amount of anime, and like maybe you are currently, or you just have in the past. I don't know, but like I am an anime virgin, so to speak. I don't think I've watched really much at all. So this is a crossroads potentially. So
I really hope this actually gets you into appreciating more and more animes. I mean, like, they're so good. Like, the fact that people like avoid them just sheer because they're an anime and just leave that on the table independent of how good the stories can be is very disappointing to me. And it's a battle I've been fighting really my whole life.
Yeah, I don't
do it.
I don't want to minimize. I don't know if the reason I avoid them is because they're animated and I don't know, think they're childish or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't know why it's gone past me. Maybe I just simply wasn't open-minded enough for a while. And now I feel like it's too late. But again, that doesn't seem like a reasonable opinion to have.
It's never too late.
It does seem like it's never too late.
I'm just incredibly interested in what exact type of art style they're going to go with this. I think it has to be...
What the graphic novels are is what I would immediately think. Because I think it's pretty distinctive.
I feel like if they don't go with the art style of the graphic novels, it's a miss.
I mean, I don't know how to characterize it, especially like in audio form. Big eyes. But that's like, isn't that also kind of true of like a lot of anime? Again, I don't want to like minimize the form, but like, isn't Big Eyes kind of like part of it?
I think it has to be the same art style. And honestly, I would compare this to some of like the Cartoon Network shows that we see in today's day and age.
I could definitely see that.
And I think it would work. But even this art style, like I wouldn't classify it as like, you know, traditional anime. What comes to mind? And obviously the main trope is, and I hate to be the guy that always says this, but the main trope that everyone always goes to is like Dragon Ball Z. But I mean, there's so many different art styles that like it could be anything. It could be whatever you want. It just has to be unique to the story.
The other thing I'm definitely curious about is, you know, this is a series. I don't know if it's a mini series. I don't know how many episodes, whatever, but that essentially guarantees that it's going to be longer than the movie and in longer form than the movie. Having not read the graphic novels, I don't know what content gets added. So I'm curious if the rest of the content we're going to get is going to hold up with what I currently know and love. I'm not necessarily apprehensive about it. Like I'm very trusting, especially of Edgar Wright, but curious is I guess what I'll say that I am. So I don't know that we know when this is happening. It doesn't say. It may be out there on the internet and I just haven't seen it yet, but it's in development and they've gotten the whole cast. So super, super excited about that. Especially considering, like, again, it's amazing how big some of these people have gotten. Chris Evans, obviously huge, and he was kind of big back then in 2010, but he's bigger now, I would think. Kieran Culkin, I feel like, has gotten bigger. Brie Larson's gotten bigger. Aubrey Plaza's gotten bigger. I mean, there's some real heavy hitters here. So very, very excited for that to come out. When we come back, we're going to take a short break now, first of all. When we come back, we're going to talk about Blue Beetle. But before we take our break and before we talk about Blue Beetle, it's that time again where I talk about someone who's not Blue Beetle. Actually, maybe he is Blue Beetle. I guess we wouldn't know, right? It's Stephen Keller, our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Stephen Keller, who may or may not be Blue Beetle. I don't know. Stephen, let us know, I guess. Stephen supports us at the highest of our 3 levels on our Patreon. That is, again, the night level, the producer level. He gets access to the secret segment and vlog, of course, but also he gets this shout out every episode. He gets input into the weekly game segment, and he also gets the occasional guest spot on the show. You want to be a knight. You want to be like Stephen. You maybe want to be Blue Beetle, again, or some superhero. I could totally see Steven being a superhero. That's the point I'm trying to make. There is also a Squire level, which maybe you can consider to be the sidekick level, and that gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And there's a page level, which I don't know. What would you say in the superhero realm? There's superhero, sidekick, and I don't know what the third person would be. In any case, they would get access.
The pet?
Sure.
There's super pets sometimes.
We could go with that.
No, this would be an Alfred level where like you don't realize that they're like the main superhero of the story, but like Alfred's a badass just as much as anyone else.
Yeah, or like Jarvis, you know, keeping it in like the butler realm. You get access to the secret segment, so that's also pretty cool. These are all.
Now I low-key want to change our tiers.
Yeah, we could. Well. We could talk about that. But in any sense, these are all tiers available to you on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Online Warriors Podcast. Head over there, get the details, look at it before it maybe changes from night theme to superhero theme. And yeah, thanks again to Steven for continuing to support the show. And you want to be like Steven and you want to help us keep this thing rolling along. So again, that's Patreon.
Logo stays the same. We'll just be online knights. And then we'll have it the Dark Knight, the Robin.
I feel like we'd get like
we'd get dinged by DC for that for sure. But again, patreon.com/Online Warriors Podcast. Thanks again to Steven. We'll be right back to talk about Blue Beetle.
Do you love Marvel but are tired of hearing Cheeto-stained white guys talk about it?
Are you hoping to see the X-Men and Avengers face off?
Do you secretly want to be Jessica Jones or Daisy Johnson?
Or do you want to be with Valkyrie?
If so, you've found your new favorite podcast. We're your hosts, Madam Chris
And Madam Amy, and we are here to give you the commentary you want.
Marvel, minus the mansplaining.
Find us wherever you get your podcasts and visit us at themarvelousmadams.com.
Madams assemble.
Okay, so Blue Beetle. This is a DC character. This is a movie that is coming out, scheduled for release August 18th, 2023. As of this recording, we are getting the first trailer for this movie tomorrow. So we've gotten what I'm going to call the pre-trailer sizzle. And this was a sizzle. The steak itself comes tomorrow. But the sizzle provides enough of a brief glimpse at what seems to be, and Techtic, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the idea here that he is an unwilling superhero, because that's kind of what they're making it seem like.
He is a Spider-Man-esque superhero, which I think is the right choice. This is the first Blue Beetle installment where he's like a teenager, and the other two before this Blue Beetle rendition, this one is Jamie Reyes, and before Jamie there were two other Beetles that were kind of older, more adolescent Blue Beetles, and I think this is the right choice. This is like a fantastic contender for a light, fun, action-packed DC superhero movie.
Does he know karate?
No, but I know why you're asking this.
Yeah, I had to ask because the main character, Blue Beetle, is being played by one of the main characters in Cobra Kai, which I think is good casting. I liked him in Cobra Kai.
Never seen Cobra Kai.
It's fantastic. You should check it out. But yeah, he's who plays Jamie Reyes. And if you don't know anything about Blue Beetle, basically there's like a sacred scarab,
you got it, yeah.
sacred beetle that latches on to its host. And it's supposed to be like parasitic in nature, where it takes it over and then uses that host to like do its bidding and take over the planet. But like this beetle is broken, and so it's more of like a Venom Eddie Brock situation where it works with its host and they're like buds.
Yeah, the word I'm seeing is grafts. It grafts onto him, forming a powerful exoskeleton.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying sort of a Venom symbiote situation where they become one and they work together to do good. So yeah, it gives them, like the ability to fight crime, fly, go up into space, have armor, those kind of fun things that any teenage boy would want.
But doesn't he not want it, or am I imagining that? I
mean, any teenager would be intimidated by such abilities, right?
True, but it would also be super fun, I would think.
But ultimately, this is a Spider-Man-esque story arc where, young kids given great responsibility and ultimately steps up to the plate. The Blue Beetle even goes on to be part of the Teen Titans and ultimately into the Justice League and does fantastic things. Blue Beetle is a badass character. And like I said, for DC to now have a contender to compete with shows like the Spider-Man, obviously nothing can compete with the Spider-Man. It's just like a titan of intellectual property. But for DC to then go along with the introduction of a new hero where it's light and fun, because they've already kind of destroyed Shazam. I hate to say it already, but
did you guys see the new Shazam?
There's nothing but like bad reviews.
Sure.
Yeah, it's probably going to be something that we wait until it hits HBO Max.
True. I guess let me ask a devil's advocate question. Well, let me first note that George Lopez is in this, which sorry, George, but I forgot you existed. Welcome back.
How could you forget?
Well,
he's like
back.
Burned into my skull every morning at like 2 a.m.
Yeah. He's of course referring to the George Lopez show.
He's immortal.
I don't think that's really true, but he's back now. He's still kicking. Let me ask a devil's advocate kind of question, which is in the current day and age. So it's kind of a teaser for my secret segment or my Patreon exclusive vlog.
I wish they
month.
did this years ago.
Well, right. So I think comic books as a movie genre are approaching a grisly death. How does this counteract that inertia and be interesting? Because, granted, we've only seen like 20 seconds of it, but I was not that interested. I'm just going to be honest.
I really do feel for gonna butcher his name, but Zolo Manduia. That's the actor who plays Blue. I do feel for him because the timing of this kind of really sucks. Like Cobra Kai really took off his career, and this was his chance to kind of be on a great big platform with DC superhero money. But like, yeah, you're right. The superhero exhaustion is real, and I really hope it doesn't take away from this, and this can just be like a standalone fun ride that does really well.
I think.
Well, also to your point, I wonder like what kind of exclusivity contracts that, when some of these actors sign on to superhero roles, I know sometimes their schedule is basically blocked out just in case they have to do a sequel or some kind of crossover movie. And I wonder if/how that sort of thing is implemented, how it will impact his young career.
It's Xolo Maridueña. I just did some Wikipediaing. I think is the pronunciation of his name. But yeah, this is a Black Widow situation, I feel like. I guess kind of different than that, but like this is too late. I think he's getting short shrift. I think the character is getting short shrift. Like it's not the right situation for this movie to be in to see success. Especially, again, we just were talking about Shazam 2. Not that it's directly following that, but this section of Hollywood is, I don't know if it's overstating it to say it's in a state of crisis right now. So I don't know for sure that this is what's going to save that. But,
like I said, as long as they keep this as a standalone fun ride, it'll do well, and his career should remain in the great trajectory that it's going. He's doing fantastic for himself, but it just gets me so nervous for him. I want him to do well. I loved him in Cobra Kai, and I want him to keep riding that wave.
What is it going to take for Warner Brothers and Disney and these big studios to say, all right, we're going to take 5 years off to let the public cleanse their respective palates? What would it take?
I don't know if they will. I don't think it'll happen.
Fair enough. I think you're probably right. I just think if you were to put the entire comic book thing in the deep freeze for 5 years, and then I saw this movie, like a trailer for this movie, I would be probably at least 3 times more excited than I am right now. I don't know. Food for thought. Blue Beetle, August 18th, 2023. And again, Susan Sarandon's also in this. That's seems like a big deal.
I mean, superhero movies are not lacking big names.
No, certainly not.
They're getting star actors. I mean, obviously there's some newer actors filling in young roles, but they're getting some big names. So that's not really the reason why they're failing. I think it's just, like you said, superhero fatigue. And I think it's just the cyclical nature. I mean, not that it's directly comparable, but look at Tom Cruise. He never really stopped putting out movies. But there was a period of time where some of his movies were just kind of like clunkers. Like they weren't anything special. And yet he gave it enough time, and Top Gun 2 rolled around. I know it's Top Gun Maverick, but the Top Gun sequel rolled around, and now he was back on top. So maybe that's just the way of things.
It's possible. I don't want to write off the genre entirely. If they don't reduce their frequency, it's just going to keep going the way that it's going. That's my opinion. Again, there's a vlog about this. Head over to our Patreon if you want to subscribe and see it, where I talk about why I think that this section of the industry is dying. But hopefully, Blue Beetle can buck that trend and get things back in the black and keep this party rolling. Let's talk about what we've been up to. It's time for anyone want to do it? Anyone want to do the song?
What are you up to
Wednesday?
Oh, you guys did a collaboration. I like it. Who should go first? Nerdbomber, go first. Take us away.
All right, so I think I said last week I started playing Hifi Rush, and I finished it. It's not a very long game. It's about like a 10-hour game, and over the span of 2 weeks, I've just been kind of chipping away at it. It ended up being a really good game. I kind of wish there were more of this style games. Like, obviously at its heart, it's like a hack and slash game, but everything is in rhythm to music. You have to be on rhythm to get the best combos and scores and rankings, because how they've kind of broken down the game is there's chapters or tracks, as if it was on like a music album, because it's a very musically based game.
Yeah, that tracks.
And thank you. Each
Classic.
level or track ranges from about half an hour to an hour. And even within that, every little battle that you encounter within that track, you get like a grade. And then at the end, you get a grade for that track. But everything's to music, and how on beat you are kind of drives up that grade and your score. And it was just very unique. I think the writing and the characters were very irreverent and funny. They definitely took like a shot at being kind of cynical about corporations, which I find is pretty funny lately. And everything was just like the animation and art style was very in tune with, the art style that I kind of know and love. And it was just a really good game. It had a pretty good story. It didn't take itself too seriously. It didn't overstay its welcome. I wish there were more games like Hifi Rush. And especially because it was kind of like shadow dropped, like it was announced and then released on the same day that it was announced. Just good stuff. And a lot of little like Easter egg stuff. If you've played any other like Tango Gameworks games, I know this is kind of off brand and off genre for them because they're mostly responsible for like the Evil Within and like that kind of type of game. And there were definitely little Easter eggs throughout Hifi Rush calling back to that, which I thought was pretty neat and clever as well. So overall, like definitely want to put this one on your kind of like watch list if you're waiting for sale. I would say it's not a full price game and it's on Game Pass, so I wouldn't even like necessarily wait for a sale. I thought it was a really good time and I found it was very refreshing for me. Kind of just a step away from the usual genres that I play. And I really enjoyed it.
Shadow drops are amazing. You mentioned that this was shadow drop, and I remember we were just talking about it on the show. I want more shadow drops, and I don't know how likely that is, but like, those always excite me. Even if the game isn't necessarily the game I like, it's just like, I think I want to understand what's better for the publisher, doing shadow drops or releasing trailers and stuff. It probably depends on what the game is, but
yeah, I think it's very dependent because like this is obviously a smaller game. And so I think if I got beaten over the head with this game for like 2 years, maybe my expectations would have been different going in. Like maybe I would have expected something different.
Yeah.
And maybe not have liked it as much. But because it was kind of a surprise to me, like I didn't even really know what to expect. I didn't really even look anything up. Like I'd read a few reviews saying like, oh, this is generally pretty good. But like I wasn't watching videos or trailers. I didn't know what to expect from the combat. So it felt like everything was just new and exciting and kind of got revealed to me as I went, and it was super cool. But I imagine like a game that thrives on pre-orders and skins and stuff probably can't do that.
Right. With shadow drops, you just raise the chances of surprising people and allowing them self-discovery, which I think that's really great. But yeah, like you can't shadow drop like Halo. You can't do that. So.
Exactly. And the other thing that we did that I wanted to talk about was we watched Tetris. So that dropped on Apple TV Plus this weekend. And I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when the trailer came out. But essentially, it's the story behind, the licensing and initial distribution of the game Tetris, which was invented by somebody who lived in Russia. And in Russia, because of, the political climate of that country at the time, it didn't really leave Russia for a while, and it was all kind of distributed for free on floppy disks. And it wasn't until someone from the West discovered the game that it really became like a monetized game that was sold worldwide. And it was a very interesting story. I don't want to spoil anything, but one of the things that I do have to note is that some of the scenes in the movie that were definitely there for dramatic effect, that were fun in the movie, probably didn't happen in real life based on some of the things that I read. But I don't think it detracted from the movie at all. I thought it was overall kept me very interested and invested. And I think it told enough of the true story, even though there were some fictionalized bits thrown in, that were still very interesting and kind of blow your mind when you think about all of the hoops and hurdles in terms of contracts and licensing that had to kind of get.
I think it's worth telling the main difference between what we saw in the movie and in real life.
There is like a car chasing that just does not happen in real life.
It was all in boardrooms.
Oof.
Yeah. But I mean, it made the movie feel fun. It gave it a little bit higher stakes. And, with any kind of like historical biopic sort of deal, it kind of assumed that they take some creative license with that. Plus the two main guys, like the creator of Tetris and his business partner, who were two of the main characters in the movie, those guys in real life like were executive producers, so obviously they had to like sign
greenlight it.
Some of those. Yeah, but it was still overall very interesting, very different than I expected it to be. There was a lot, like I said, of like political boardroom contractual stuff going on. I would say it kind of felt almost like The Big Short for a video game, and I'm interested to see what else happens in this genre, especially like taking a look at the history of video games now that this movie kind of paved the way.
Also, like when you watch this, it's wild, all the stuff that you learn about Microsoft, and like, oh man, corporations are wild. They're just crazy.
I mean,
well, a lot of the like contracts and licensing and just behind the scenes lobbying and stuff like that is kind of crazy, especially like I'm assuming the three of us, none of us have ever been involved in those sort of negotiations, and it is pretty crazy.
I have not. The Big Short for video games is a very strong sell, so I'll have to check this out.
Yeah, it was quite good. Those are my two big things that I did this weekend and week. So
Cool. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to go next. I feel like I usually let you guys go next to each other, but I'm going to go next. And I'm going to talk about a thing I have been doing that you already heard and just talk more about how great it is, which is Returnal. As of this recording, I think I've put in around 8 hours and I'm about, according to my PlayStation, like 21% of the way through the game. There are, I think, 5 biomes in the game total, and I think I've visited 2 of them. I don't know if it's like a linear progression necessarily, but I want to talk specifically about how easy and fun it is. The game itself is challenging, but it's easy to lose time playing it because of the grind and how fun the grind is. And I think a big focus, like a big reason for that is what the game calls the adrenaline system, which is essentially, so it's a third-person shooter. You're traversing an environment and you're killing enemies, you're shooting enemies that are shooting at you. And adrenaline, basically, the longer you go without taking any damage, every time you get 3 kills without taking damage, your adrenaline level rises and you get a buff of some kind. You know, your weapon overheat percentage goes down, or you have enhanced vision where you can see enemies from farther away, see them from behind walls, your weapon proficiency rate goes up, things like that. And it goes all the way up to 5. So if you can kill 15 enemies without taking damage, you essentially feel like a superhero. And I just like, on a neurological level, I want to understand why that's so addictive to me, but it really, really is. Like, I think it just shapes the game so much more than if you're running around. Like, you're obviously going to try to avoid taking damage, but it raises the stakes on any little interaction with even like something that's just a bullet sponge, easy thing to kill. You're going to care so much more about your interaction with that because you don't want to take any damage because you want your adrenaline to go up. And I just think that makes the grind super, super satisfying. So I'm really enjoying that game. I wanted to shout it out again because I'm going to be playing it until the end of time at this rate. And it's great. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is something I haven't mentioned before because I haven't played it until this past week. It's a board game. I mentioned board games every so often on this show. I do that. I have a group of people I get together and play with every now and then. And I played a really cool game called Rolling Realms, which, as you can imagine based on the title, it's dice based, but there's a couple things I want to highlight about it. One, it has a solo mode, and every game that I tend to buy has a solo mode because my wife isn't super into board games. So, other than just like pride of ownership, I think it makes more sense for the games I own to be solo board games. But it also was a game that was developed in 2020 during the pandemic. So it's actually originally what they call a roll and write, meaning you can actually, I think it was really called a print and play, which means you can just get 2 dice, print out some stuff and play it. It's since been released in actual board game form where they have like dry erase cards and stuff that's reusable. But, it's designed to be played over video conference. It's designed to be played remotely. And I think that's really cool. And, nothing is lost when you play it in person with, 4 people as I did. The other thing that's great about it is games like this and kind of games that are in that tier of board games that are beyond like Monopoly and what have you tend to be expensive. And this is currently on Amazon for $20, which is a very low price point for these sorts of games. So definitely recommend checking that out. I haven't bought it myself yet, but I definitely plan to. And really great game. So that leaves Techtic. Techtic, what have you been up to?
Hello. So the couple of things that I've been up to is I am still playing Zelda Oracle of Ages, and I'm just about at the last boss. It's been a fun ride, but I'll let you know when that goes. Just puzzle funness, 2D side scroll, great time. Still 10 out of 10, recommend. The other thing that I want to talk about is we've been binging through Ted Lasso. Also a fantastic ride. What's not to say about good old Ted? It's what you get from the last 2 seasons. He is just enjoyable, feel good, fun. There's some drama, some turmoil, but at the end of the day, everyone is just like their truest, best self on the show, and you gotta love it. And then the last thing is we've also been binging Love is Blind, and gosh, what just a fun compilation of garbage television. And I say that endearingly. I know I crap on reality TV shows, guys, but this show's got something special, and it gets me hooked season after season. It's so watchable.
It's just so
I could not get behind
People are so garbage.
The Circle that I just found annoying, but this has got me. This season has like Mean Girls in it, which, like, if you've seen Mean Girls, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And they're terrible people, and you gotta watch them. It makes you feel better about yourself. So if you feel like hating on people, this show is ready for the picking.
For what it's worth, don't listen to him. The Circle is also great, but I will say I think Love is Blind is better and maybe the best original reality program that Netflix has put out. So strong.
Have you
concur.
been keeping up with it, Illeagle?
In as much as I just said that, I haven't actually. I'll probably binge it all in like a weekend at some point soon.
So
I have popped in and out, so I know who some of the characters are.
the final episodes aren't out yet, so we don't know what couples are together, but I'm going to throw out an Illeagle, since you don't really know everybody, but like you have a decent sense. I just want to get a feel for who you guys think will actually make it past the altar. First of all, Kwame and Chelsea, go.
This is the skinny blonde
Yes.
chick. Yeah,
I think they'll both say yes, but they're not going to make it beyond that.
not a chance.
Yeah, I say no. I
Yeah,
think
not
he's
a
too
chance.
hung up on Micah.
Nope. They're going to both say yes, but then get divorced promptly thereafter.
And that's going to lead us into Micah and Paul. And Micah is one of
No.
the mean girls.
No, they're,
Doesn't she think that he's ugly? Didn't
no.
she, like,
She
say
thinks
that?
he is fine.
But that may
What? Am I
that may
I'm
have
thinking of the right person.
changed after her best friend in the pods tried to go after him. Unclear.
I'm going to say no to all of them except for the really hot black guy. What's his name?
Brett.
The hottest guy.
Yeah, Brett and
Probably.
Tiffany.
Yeah,
They're
they're
so
gonna make it.
secure.
They're for sure,
like
100%.
if something.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're going to make it for sure. I think everyone else is
I think
toast.
that's fair.
Nope. I think Kwame and Brett are the two that are gonna get married.
I see. So Kwame's spot kind of got blown up a little bit. There's another show called Married at First Sight. And apparently, and this was going around on TikTok, apparently that man was also on Married at First Sight and did not make the cut. But he is like seen in the background in like the group of initial guys who don't make the cut.
Well, he makes the cut, guys.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I'll catch up fully on it at some point, but it's great television. The thing that Love is Blind does that I place so much value in is two characters. Well, I shouldn't call them characters. These are real people, but they'll have an interaction where someone will get slighted or someone's feelings will get hurt. And I don't know who was putting the music together for that show, but they find
Oh, it is
somehow...
it is the most like specific music in the world.
Yeah, it's like... Imagine a song that's playing at a club, like a club anthem, but it's also a pop ballad at the same time about how your heart's been broken and you're
it's not
standing
even
in the
like
rain.
that. It's like a club ballad, and the scene that just happened is someone got like their chocolate chip cookie taken away, and then it's like, I just got my cookie taken away.
Yeah, you think that's like, yeah, people listening and who haven't watched the show, you think he's exaggerating. He's not. Like that is exactly what it is. It's like someone says like, I don't love you, and the music's like, I don't love you, and you're like, wow, did they write this music for the show? It's amazing. Yeah, you should if you haven't watched one season, go watch like one season. It'll take you like a day. Just throw a whole day away. Who cares? Watch this show, and you'll probably understand you'll at least understand more. What we're talking
Honestly,
about, 'cause it's
if
really
you're
amazing.
sick or like snowed in, those are the instances where I find myself like I start to watch these shows and then I'm done for.
If I remember correctly, and we can go, the tape will tell the truth on this. I believe my wife and I watched it first, and I was like, you guys need to watch this. Either that, or we were both watching the first season independently, and like, it was one of those things where I think I felt guilty about admitting that I was watching it first. And
you
then we were
guys
like,
recommended
oh yeah, but
it,
it's crazy.
and then I was like, no, that's trash. And then one day I was homesick,
Which it is.
and Techtic
Yeah.
wasn't home at the time, but it was like it was like sleeping all day, and I woke up around like 3, and I was like, okay, well, I need to watch something. It can't be something he would want to watch with me, so I like throw it on, and then I get engrossed, and then he comes home from work, and he's like, are you watching this trash? And then
What is this garbage?
He
Move
sits
over.
down and then immediately gets engrossed, and that was like the rest of our day.
This story absolutely checks out, because one of the things I vividly remember is season 1 came out and my wife and I were watching, and then like, yeah, sounds like I told you about it. And like, what I remember is like being at work on like a Tuesday or something, and at like 10 a.m. getting a message from Nerdbomber, just no context at all, being like, and this isn't a spoiler, this show's been out forever, just being like, dude, Carlton is such a piece of shit. Which he was. And yeah, I guess it's kind of like, it's a great show. That's the point. You should all go watch it. And that's another thing, by the way. They shadow dropped the latest season of Love is Blind. There was no announcement. It was just, here you go. It's out. And we were all like, yes, please. So yeah, it's a great show. Okay, well, if that rounds out our what are we up to's, then I think it's time for a quiz.
What a perfect segue. The quiz topic this week is jellyfish, which has nothing to do with Love is
Jellyfish.
Blind. And before we roll into the quiz, Illeagle, why don't you give us what the standings are?
Yeah, I know why you said that, because you're in first. Techtic is 4-3. Nerdbomber is 3-4. I'm 3-5. Steven, 1-0. Congrats to Steven. Undefeated record on the year. I have a chance to tie things up, right? No, I have a chance to pass Nerdbomber.
You know,
what it is.
I don't want to jinx myself, so here I am knocking on wood. But I have yet to lose. Like, I've never won. I've yet to win, I don't think. I can't remember if I won last year. I don't think I did. I have not won, but I have not lost. And that is really the key for me.
Really cruising on the mediocrity train.
Hey, I'm good with that.
Maybe this year is your year to do one or the other.
So,
but right now you're exactly in the middle.
So with that, let's roll right into the quiz with the first question. How big is the largest jellyfish?
Are we talking like weight
In what
or like
metric?
diameter?
Yeah.
Or
Feet.
is it like diameter?
This
feet?
is from top dome to tippy the tentacles.
Tippy of the tentacles.
Oh, so it's like height. Okay.
Who goes first?
You, because you have a better record. I get an advantage.
Okay, I feel like there are some big old jellies. And I feel like there's probably a people-sized one out there. So what units did you say you wanted this in?
Feet.
Feet.
You know what? I'm going to go like NBA player. I'm going to go like 8 feet tall.
It's got to be more than that. I'm going to go 9. I'm going to use my +1 right away and go 9 feet. I can count 8 feet, 1 inch.
All right, that's an excellent use of the +1. It was really, really close, so really good job there. The lion's mane jellyfish is the largest among the jellyfish species, with a known specimen stretching across 120 feet from its top of its head to its bottom of its tentacles.
Really close.
Really good use
close.
of the +1.
I think it's a fine use of the +1. I get it out of the way early, and I'm on the board in the positive column. So no shame here.
The next question is, what is the oldest known record of a jellyfish?
So we're going back to Jesus times. We're pre-Jesus times. When did they first learn to write?
Blank
That's what we're
years
talking about
ago
here.
is...
Blank years ago?
Don't give me a date. Just say this many years ago was when it was dated to.
It's like 10,000. 10,000.
I feel like it was more.
Years
like
ago.
I feel like jellyfish, like I'm thinking ocean species, and they're pretty old. I'm going to say 50,000 years.
It's like cave paintings,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like there's a painting in a cave
Jesus
somewhere.
ain't got nothing on these times. The oldest known, well, first and foremost, jellyfish, because they're soft-bodied and very watery,
Hard to
they're
find records.
super, super rare. But of the ones that do exist, the oldest known jellyfish fossil found in Utah was dated to 505 million years ago.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't want to go in the millions
Oh,
because
okay.
I was scared, but
I didn't think it was fossils. I thought it was like, what's the earliest known recording of like the existence of a jellyfish? So I misunderstood the question, but I accept the loss.
I mean, technically a fossil is a recording. It's just Mother
Yeah.
Nature's recording.
Okay, semantics. All right. Okay, 1-1.
Okay, so a show that's very centered around jellyfish is SpongeBob SquarePants.
I knew it.
What percentage
Now we're talking.
of the 277 episodes released featured jellyfish?
Like in any capacity, like we're talking mentions.
So, like, if there's 5 mentions in one episode, that's still just one episode.
Right,
So
but like,
how-
is he
Well,
talking
right,
about like
but is it-
mentions? Can it be like a picture of a jellyfish? Like, what are we talking about here?
this includes mentions.
Okay.
I'm going to say, goodness, 40%. Because I feel like they don't outright mention it.
It's got to be higher. It's got to be higher than that. 60%.
So, this was a very strong guess by Nerdbomber. If you used your plus 1.5, you would have nailed it. It was 41.5%.
That's crap. So I'm screwed
Yeah,
now.
because I still got my +1 in the bank. So is going first really an advantage for
I mean,
me?
I think it still is. Because you still get a last up, and last ups always have
You
more.
went
Yeah,
first.
that's
are always
fair.
more
That's
important.
You went first last
Yeah.
week, and I won.
Look, we get it. I suck. What do you want from me?
Okay, so the next question is, no jellyfish actually generate electricity of any of the species. None of them. Common misconception.
But they sting.
They do sting. Of the 4,000 species of jellyfish, how many actually carry enough poison to kill?
To kill what? Humans? 0. This is a trick question.
1.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, the 0 knowing that the +1 was not a good strategic guess.
Well, no, I think it was actually.
Oh.
Because it could have been a trick question. And +1, I'm never going to get it exactly right. Out of 4,000, might as well just swing for the fences.
Most
Anyways,
of
that
the
was wrong.
4,000
What
most
was
of the
it?
4,000 species of jellyfish cause only pain and discomfort when they sting humans. However, the subsect box jellyfish, which is 50 species that inhabit tropical areas, have enough poison to be fatal. And fun fact about the way they sting is they have these like micro harpoons that they can shoot at you at 60 kilometers per hour. That's pretty crazy. I thought that was crazy. Jellyfish are wild.
50 is pretty close to 0, so I'm not that upset. But yeah, congratulations, Nerdbomber.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, we got one more question still, and that is, what percentage of a jellyfish is water?
Oh, and Nerdbomber's first.
It's probably like 95%.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do +1 again, but I'm just gonna say 98. It's like almost everything.
So Nerdbomber's just mean. She nailed it on the head.
Wow.
That is really mean.
But yeah, 95%.
Why are you being like that? What did I ever do to you?
Sorry. I'm not sorry. Who are we
Okay, so you definitely won. Yeah, you definitely won. Next week I'll be facing off with Techtic. Even if I beat him, I won't move in the standings. So
And then one other fun fact about jellyfish, there was actually a species of jellyfish that sort of reversed evolved into a parasitic entity that can not only infect water-dwelling creatures, but has been found on land-dwelling creatures in their brains, including mammals. So, terrifying jellyfish.
sounds like some Last of Us stuff. Cool. Be careful with jellyfish. I'll remember that on my vacation. Again, I won't be here next week, so you're gonna have to deal with some heavy necking. Or light necking. I don't know if you guys can do heavy necking every time. I don't know if you have that kind of stamina or if it's just going to be light necking next week or no necking. Have you guys decided at all or are you just going to wing it?
Oh, we're just going to wing it like we always do.
Okay, fair enough. Well, the listeners all have that to look forward to. You can head over to patreon.com if you are interested in supporting the show. You can look us up on an Apple Podcast, leave us a review there. And you can hit us up on Twitter at OnlineWarriors1 is our main show handle. Host accounts mentioned previously in the episode. Go have a conversation with us. Let us know if you're sad about E3 dying or if you think it might be a good thing, ? Talk to us about Blue Beetle. Talk to us about Scott Pilgrim. Talk to us about anything at all. Talk to us about whether you're an overpacker or an underpacker, or if you pack last minute, or if you pack like a week in advance. Talk to us about anything. That's the point I'm trying to make. And have a great week. And until next week, stay safe and keep on podcasting.